Good afternoon. This is KTN Newsdesk. My name is Najma Ismail. Now, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is calling on Kenyans to unite in the fight against terrorism. The top American diplomat who this morning laid a wreath at the 1998 U.S. Embassy bomb blast site is also assuring Kenyans that the U.S. continues to support the country in the war against terror. Kerry is on a 2-day state visit to Kenya.
With deep respect and sadness that I lay a wreath dedicated to the many Kenyans and Americans who perished or were injured or who lost loved ones on that day. Let me be clear. The terrorists who struck on August 7th, 1998 failed utterly in their purpose, which was to implant fear in the hearts of the Kenyan people and to divide America from the citizens of this country. They failed for the same reason that terrorists will always fail. Yes, they can reduce a building to rubble. And yes, they can even deprive innocent people of their lives. But they do not give anyone anything of what really makes life worthwhile. A sense of community, of looking out for one another, of creating something valuable and new, of living in dignity and honor.
Now, Kenya will not allow homosexuality. That's the position of Deputy President William Ruto just days after the High Court allowed the registration of a gay lobby group. The ruling has sparked debate not just in religious and political circles, but also within the legal fraternity. Did the High Court's argument contradict the penal code? Well, Asha Mwilu reports.
We started applying for registration as early as April 2012.
In October last year, the Human Rights Watch published this online video showing the struggles of groups advocating for the rights of lesbians, gay, bisexual, transgender and intersex persons in Kenya. By then, the NGO's coordination board had refused to register LGBTI groups, deeming their names unacceptable.
I am at the Central Park waiting for a client who we're supposed to have a meeting with. He needs legal advice on his case. I can't meet him at the office because we don't have an office. So I meet in such public places.
2 weeks ago, the High Court ended these groups' misery, ordering the NGO's board to recognize and register a gay rights lobby group. But the ruling has opened a Pandora's box, turning the debate into a moral, religious, and even political one.
Taifa la Kenya ni taifa linalomcha Mungu. Hatuna nafasi kwa washoga na wale wengine.
Can the minority then claim to have a...
But human rights lawyer Maurice Mbondenyi thinks the biggest question this ruling has left is a legal one.
When the court goes ahead to say that although gayism and lesbianism may be illegal, let us give them formal legal recognition to exercise their right to freedom of association as guaranteed by the Bill of Rights, we are simply saying that, look, let's look beyond the illegality of this group and grant them association. So that means tomorrow we can actually have any other group like the MRC and other groups, murderers associating, coming together and seeking for legal recognition, and they're granted, because that is what the High Court seems to purport.
During the final drafting stages of the Constitution of 2010, the legality of gays and lesbians reached the table of the Committee of Experts, with some scholars calling for the equal rights of these groups.
Sexuality is like a pendulum, a sliding scale. Even if you define yourself as a heterosexual, you probably have a little gay in you. The Committee of Experts that is headed by Mr. Nzamba Kitonga, that is drafting the new constitution, should listen to the inner voice of humanism.
But the Committee of Experts resorted not to legalize homosexuality. Instead, it ensured that a strong Bill of Rights would protect the fundamental freedoms of all Kenyans. In its ruling, the High Court's 3-judge bench relied heavily on the Bill of Rights.
right from the preamble of the Constitution, where we say we acknowledge, the supremacy of the Almighty God, then we also need to come and ask ourselves whether the entire Constitution is inspired by that acknowledgement of the Almighty God. Then we need to ask ourselves, what is our value system as a nation? Is gayism and lesbianism part of our value system?
Almost 5 years ago, Kenyans hoisted a large flag inside Uhuru Park to signify the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya of 2010. And in those 5 years, the conversation concerning that law has been more of a progressive nature. But now, with the High Court ruling concerning the registration of coalitions of gays and lesbians, Kenya is having to have a more uncomfortable conversation concerning the law. Does the Constitution have gray areas? Is it time to amend certain aspects or certain clauses of that Constitution? And more importantly, is it time for Kenya to have that conversation about the legalization of homosexuality? Asha Mwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
Now, Kabete residents are currently voting for their next member of parliament in a by-election pitting 9 candidates for a seat previously held by the late George Mushai. Low voter turnout has been reported, and KTN's Aaron Ochieng tells us. We now join him live for further details. Aaron Ochieng. Aaron Ochieng is
Najma Ismail, we are almost halfway into this exercise here in Kabete constituency, the by-election. Right now, the returning officer is giving a brief to the members of the press in regard to what has happened. But quickly, there are 2 issues that have come into the fold. One is the legality of the people who are contesting, although legally they are supposed to be vying, but some of the candidates are raising issues in regard to why the IEBC or the laws of Kenya can allow someone who's been registered in another constituency to vie. Those are the issues that only 2 of the candidates out of the 9 candidates who are vying for this particular seat are registered voters here in Kabete. That is Kiriro Wangugi of the Democratic Party and Newton Njenga of the National Vision Party. We talked to them early in the day, and they are saying it is not proper to have people who have registered in other constituencies to come and vie. But besides that, the exercise has been smooth. We have not seen any major incident, apart from one case that has been reported by Kavore Kariuki, who is vying on a NAC Kenya ticket, who said that he has evidence of voter bribery that has been happening in many of the polling stations. But all in all, we are waiting for the exercise to continue. It has been low turnout, especially because many of these people are farmers, others are business people. But the information that we are reliably informed is that come this afternoon, we're going to see most of the people coming in before the closure of the polling stations at 5 o'clock. Back to you, Najma.
Now, away from Wilson Buru, Kenya is holding a regional journalist convention as part of the events marking the World Press Freedom Day. The celebrations will converge into 4th Annual Journalism Excellence Award. This will be held later tonight. Right now, however, KTN's Rita Tinina joins us from the Hotel Intercontinental, where she is following the event at the convention. Now, Rita, what are the sentiments of the status of press freedom in the country?
Well, Najma, as you mentioned there, the journalist convention is taking place here at the Hotel Intercontinental. And this is a convention that is being held just a day after the world marked the World Press Freedom Day. This is a day that was designated back in 1993 by the UN General Assembly, basically to, among other things, assess the status of media freedom, to celebrate the principles of media freedom, to honor journalists who have excelled in their work, also to pay tribute and honor journalists who have died in the line of duty. So here today, several issues are being discussed. The question that you asked about the status of media freedom here in Kenya, the Media Council says that this year, so far since the year began, the council has received 15 cases, complaints of harassment by journalists. And these are issues of journalists being intimidated, having their equipment damaged or being harassed. The most recent case, that of Ruben Ogachi from Citizen TV, as well as Nehemiah Okwemba from NTV, TV. The two were attacked by GSU officers as they covered the protest at the Galana ADC farm in Tana River. But sad, and more recently, actually just a few days ago, the death in unclear circumstances of Eldoret-based journalist John Kitui. The sentiments of those who spoke this morning all agreed that Kenya has made several strides when it comes to media freedom, but there was general consensus that there's still a long way to go for the country in achieving media freedom. Najma.
Well, Rita, has the debate on the digital migration featured in the convention?
Well, this morning, Najma, that controversial issue of digital migration, that debate was reignited here this morning. The chairman of the Kenya Editors Guild, Linus Kaikai, saying the government handled the digital migration issue in the most irresponsible manner. But Deputy President William Ruto was the chief guest, defended the government, saying that discussions were held, consultations were held. There was a wide debate on the issue of the switch off from analog to digital. And so the government saying that all was handled as it should have been before the government took the action that it took. The Cabinet Secretary for Information, Communications and Technology, Fred Matiang'i, also defending the government, saying that in fact the process has gone on. So far, he says it has been good when it comes to digital migration in the country. Najma.
If you could tell us, Rita, the credibility of the media currently in the country.
Well, the credibility of journalists is one of the other issues that came up here this morning. There are concerns that quacks and other masqueraders are operating in the media industry, giving journalists a bad name. The chair of the Kenya Editors Guild calling on the Media Council of Kenya to sort of ensure that the accreditation of journalists is a rigorous vetting process to ensure that only professional journalists are operating in the industry. There was also the concern that certain journalists are being compromised to take care of the interests, so to speak, of individuals, politicians, political parties, or even the government in their respective media houses. The term that was used here this morning by the Deputy President as well as the Chairman of the Kenya Editors Guild, Linus Kaikai, was that of mtuwetu or watuwetu in media houses, where certain journalists, as I said, are compromised, so they skew a story in the favor of either a politician, a businessman, several individuals, organizations, or the government. The other issue that came up here was that of the digital revolution and whether the new digital age is good for the country. Does it encourage a global agenda of communicating across the borders, or is it bad for the country? Does it encourage the spreading of hate speech and all? But all are agreed that perhaps some measures need to be undertaken to ensure that through the blogs, through social media such as Twitter, there is credibility and it does not serve to spread propaganda or several other things. The other issue that came up was that of laws. Linus Kaikai saying that the government has been pushing for several laws that are aimed to stifle media operations in the country. He cited broadcast regulations, and through these regulations, the government will seek to, among other things, have a programming code for media houses, where media houses will not even be able to take a commercial break until a certain time. There will also be the issue of media houses being told how to handle certain stories. The issue of the security laws, media practitioners, of course, have been against those security laws. But Deputy President William Ruto defending the government over security laws. Some of them were declared unconstitutional by the court. But William Ruto says he has no regrets over the security laws, giving an example of the Garissa attack. He says after the security laws were implemented, during that attack, no media house aired very gory images from that attack. Najma.
Well, thank you very much. Rita Tinina there at the Intercontinental Hotel, where the journalist convention is currently ongoing. She will be giving us the full story in our subsequent.
Welcome back to KTN Newsdesk. I'm Michael Karanja. Let's talk telecom right now, and I'm joined by Vincent Kamadro, who's the head of marketing and strategy at Orange Telecom Kenya. Vincent, a lot of changes happening at Telecom Kenya right now. You're shutting down CDMA, moving to more or less migrating people to GSM. What drove that strategic decision to move that direction?
Yes. So indeed, tonight at midnight, we are going to migrate all our CDMA customers to the GSM technology. You know that Orange was operating 2 different wireless networks over the last few years. That was legacy from the past. And at some point, you know, some technologies survive and evolve, and that's the case of GSM with 3G, with 4G. Some technologies end up in a dead end, and the CDMA was part of it. So we chose the modernity. We chose to invest and focus on the networks that are used all over the world, GSM, and that's why tonight we are finalizing the migration of all our CDMA customers to the GSM. So it's not really shutting down a network, it's upgrading their service to the GSM, because there'll be a lot of benefits for them. First of all, they'll all be able to keep their current phone number, so they are not losing that. On top of that, to reward their loyalty, we are offering to them a voucher to be used on a GSM handset, because it's not the same type of handset. So you just have to visit one of our 39 shops all over the country, and our shop attendants will do that. It's 5 minutes. You don't lose your number, you don't lose your credit, you don't lose your bundles. Everything is as smooth as we can.
Well, the main factor, or the main point of risk for them was that this CDMA phones were not compatible with GSM. So how are you handling that? How are you going to ensure that there's a full migration to the GSM network?
The big answer to that is that we have implemented a device subsidy policy. So everybody is eligible to a certain voucher to help them change their device, renew their device. Because you're right, the old CDMA equipment won't be able to work on our network from tomorrow.
So is there a limit to how much perhaps you would be able to subsidize the cost of a new handset for them?
The vouchers are up to 10,000 shilling. So you know that's enough to get already a very good GSM phone. Then on top of that, if you want to top up to get the phone of your dreams, it's okay. You know,
it's dependent on your pocket.
Yes.
But just looking at that, I think Telkom Kenya Orange was the only one running both networks, GSM and CDMA. But just looking at that, how popular was CDMA, and why the move now? Why the need to just stick with GSM?
Well, CDMA was popular at that time because when Orange came to this country, we started a GSM network from scratch. So it took us time to extend the coverage all over the country. So there were some areas in the country where there was only CDMA coverage, example northeastern, etc. So people liked the service here because GSM was not available. Right now, you know, we are upgrading the customers to GSM, but at the same time, we have expanded a lot our GSM coverage. Now there is 3G in Mandera, in Wajir, in Moyale. So we are bringing coverage, we are bringing faster internet speed, we are bringing a better variety of devices. In fact, there are only advantages to switch now. It's about time.
Talking about the vibrancy here and the networks that are available, you're already on 3G, 4G is the next game changer. How far have you gone along with testing that whole network and seeing whether it's the next strategic move for Telkom Kenya Orange?
So the network for Orange is ready for 4G, you know, in terms of technology. The big blocking point right now is allocation of further frequencies, because the 4G requires several bands but requires some additional frequencies. There has been a communication by CAK that we were authorized to launch a trial based on a specific frequency, the 1800 megahertz, which we are already using for 2G. It's a band that we have since a very long time. So it doesn't change really the picture, because as long as we don't have additional frequencies for 4G, it will be difficult to roll out all over the country. You know, there is a difference between doing a trial on a few sites in a small neighborhood and doing it countrywide. We really need these frequencies to offer 4G to all Kenyans and not only to a few lucky people living in a trial area.
3.3 million customers. What's the strategy going forward in terms of doubling that or even increasing that number higher?
Our strategy doesn't change too much from what we have done so far. We think that we have implemented a winning strategy based on affordable calling rates, our 2G tariffs, based on dual SIM handsets. You might have seen we are pushing in the last couple of months a very affordable phone at 999 shilling called Kaduda. I think today we have sold the 100,000th device to our shop. Yes, so it's very successful, and it allows people to test the Orange services while maybe maintaining another line that they have previously. So all this combined, plus all the 3G rollouts that we are doing across the country, it's a winning strategy, it's a winning combination, and it should allow us to reach, let's say, maybe 5 million customers by the end of the year.
All right, thank you very much. Vincent Camadro there just telling us about how Orange Telecom Kenya is shifting to GSM, is shifting people from CDMA to GSM, and how vibrant they are on that front. Najma Ismail, what's happening in Burundi?
Well, they're having the biggest protest since 2005. Now, Burundi has been hit by a new wave of protests as opposition to President Pierre Nkurunziza's bid for a third term spreads beyond the capital. Gunfire was heard and streets were barricaded in parts of the capital, Bujumbura, in the third day of the protests, with police believed to be blocking students in the second city, Gitega, from joining the demonstrations. Now, the protests are the biggest in Burundi since the civil war ended in 2005. UN Chief Ban Ki-moon said in a statement that he had dispatched his special envoy for the region, Said Djinnit, to Burundi for talks with President Nkurunziza. African Union Commission head Nkurunziza Dlamini Zuma has also welcomed the decision by the Burundi Senate to ask the Constitutional Court to rule whether Nkurunziza could stand for re-election. More than 24,000 people have fled Burundi this month as tension mounts ahead of presidential elections in June. This includes 5,000 who crossed into Rwanda at the weekend. Now, the coffin of the Gabon opposition leader André Obame finally arrived in his native north of the country after a marathon two-day journey marked by a huge outpouring of emotion and clashes with the police. Thousands thronged the airport at Oyem waiting to bury the leader they acclaimed as the West African nation's rightful president. But his remains were delayed in the capital, Libreville, by the sheer number of people wanting to pay their respect. Obame, whose challenge to President Ali Bongo Ondimba at the polls in 2009 led other foes of the regime to stand down in his favor. He died in Cameroon on April 12th at the age of 57. Now, after tens of thousands of his supporters turned out in the capital to greet the plane returning the body of the Amo, as he was generally known, the authorities intended to fly him on north to ethnic Fang country, where he was hugely popular. Long a senior figure in the regime of the late Omar Bongo, who presided over the equatorial African nation and its oil wealth for more than 41 years before he died in 2009. Obame went into opposition when the ruling party chose Bongo's son Ali as its presidential candidate. Well, that is it on Newsdesk this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Najma Ismail.